Have you ever wanted to smack a patient in the face? I've been a nurse for 9 years. I work on a general medical floor at a hospital. I have been yelled at, cursed at, and had juice thrown at my chest by a man who didn't like the brand. None of that compares to Francine Oglesby. She was admitted in January for a kidney infection. 58 years old. The worst human being I have ever had to take care of in my entire career. She arrived on a Monday. The first thing she said when I walked in was that she didn't want a male nurse. I told the charge nurse and they reassigned me. A nurse named Darcy took over. 40 minutes later, Darcy came to the station with red eyes. Francine had called her incompetent for missing a vein on the first IV stick, said she had the hands of a butcher, demanded she be removed. Darcy had been a nurse for 12 years. They sent in Kim. Kim lasted 2 hours. Francine said Kim's shoes were dirty. Kim's shoes were clean. But Francine called the patient advocate line and filed a formal complaint saying Kim was unkempt and a contamination risk. The complaint went into Kim's file. She had to write a response and meet with her supervisor over clean shoes. By Tuesday, Francine had burned through 4 nurses. The call button went every 15 minutes. Water, pillow, room too cold, then too warm. Remote had fingerprints. Toilet paper was single ply. The soap was giving her a rash. It wasn't. She had a kidney infection. She asked what brand of soap was in the dispenser because she was certain it was the cause. She asked for a different remote because the buttons felt sticky. She asked the aide what country the bed sheets were manufactured in. On Wednesday, we were short-staffed, and the charge nurse asked me to take her again. She looked at me and said, "Don't touch me unless I tell you to." I checked her IV. She told me I squeezed the cuff too tight, wrote too slowly, stood wrong. I didn't say anything back. I'd learned by year 3 that arguing with a patient like this was a losing game. You document, you stay polite, you finish the shift. An hour later, she pressed the call button for cranberry juice. I brought it. She wanted apple. I brought apple. She said it was too warm. I brought a cold one. She said the cup had a smudge. I brought a new cup. She drank half and said the brand tasted off and I should go to the store and get a better one. I told her we only carried that brand. She told me that wasn't her problem. On Thursday, Francine filed a written complaint against Darcy, said the IV insertion was rough enough to warrant a patient abuse investigation. Darcy was pulled from the floor for 2 days while she sat at home, career on the line over 1 needle stick. The hospital found no evidence. The complaint stayed in her file. On Friday, she filed against Kim, said Kim made a comment about her weight. Kim never said anything of the kind. Same process, pulled, supervisor meeting, written response, 2 days lost. On Saturday, a nurse named Bev gave Francine her medication. Francine refused the pills unless Bev could name the exact manufacturer and country of origin for each one. Bev pulled the packaging from pharmacy. Francine read every word on every box, then said one pill looked different and accused Bev of switching her meds. Filed a complaint that afternoon. The pharmacy confirmed every pill was correct. Bev was still written up. 3 nurses, formal complaints, 6 days, 1 patient. On Sunday, her doctor discharged her. She refused to leave, said her pain was an 8. She'd been declining pain medication for 2 days. Her labs were normal. The doctor discharged her anyway. The transport aide brought 3 wheelchairs before she'd accept one. Before she left, Francine asked for me. I walked to the lobby. She looked at me and said I was the only person who didn't completely fail at my job. Then she handed me a folded piece of paper and told me to give it to the administrator. I opened it after she left. It was a formal complaint about me. Cold, dismissive, lacked empathy, should be retrained. The same person who just told me to my face that I was the only one she didn't have a problem with had written the opposite down the moment before. I stood in the lobby holding it and something clicked. She told me I was the only one who didn't fail. Then she filed against me anyway. This wasn't about care. This was about control. I walked straight to the charge nurse's desk, Rosalie. I told her we needed to talk about every complaint Francine filed, not one at a time, all of them together. Rosalie didn't argue with me. She'd been there for all of it. She watched Darcy come back crying, watched Kim's shoe meeting, watched Bev get written up over pills the pharmacy had already confirmed were correct, but she told me the truth I didn't want to hear. Every formal complaint lives in the file permanently. The only way to remove one is if administration agrees to a formal review, and administration almost never reviews anything unless someone pushes hard. I thanked her and told her I wasn't done. I found Darcy charting near the supply room. 12 years and 1 patient had her second-guessing every IV stick. She used to be the one who made the floor laugh during long shifts. Now she barely talked. I sat down next to her at the computer and waited until she stopped typing. I showed her the complaint Francine had handed me in the lobby and told her what Francine had said right before, that I was the only one who didn't fail. Darcy stared at the paper for a long time. Then she looked up. Then none of it was real. She was just collecting targets. That was the word. Targets. Kim was in the break room, sandwich and phone. I'd barely sat down before she started. I had to sit in front of my supervisor and explain that my shoes were clean, like I was in middle school. 5 years at the hospital and a formal hygiene complaint in her file forever. She told me what it would look like the next time she tried to transfer departments or apply somewhere new. The first thing they'd see was a patient saying she was dirty. She wasn't sad, she was furious. I asked if she'd write a statement. I'll write 10 pages if that's what it takes. Bev was harder. I found her restocking a supply card at the end of my shift, hands fidgeting with labels. She'd already called her licensing board. They told her a pattern of complaints could trigger a license review. 1 patient, 1 fake medication accusation. And the regulator that decided whether she got to keep being a nurse was now potentially in play. Now she was worried she might lose her ability to practice. She said she'd write the statement, but I could tell she was scared. She kept saying she loved being a nurse. She kept saying it like she was trying to convince herself it wasn't already over. I went back to Rosalie before I clocked out, asked if there was any way to know if Francine had been admitted to other hospitals in the network. She hesitated, then said she couldn't pull records, but the transfer notes from Francine's admission mentioned 2 previous admissions at other facilities in the last year, both short stays, both with notes about patient-staff conflict. I called Jefferson Price that night. He worked in patient relations. We'd gone through orientation together. He listened to everything and then said the thing that made my blood run hot. Patient complaints were protected under hospital satisfaction policy. Even if the complaint was proven false, removal required a formal petition signed by the department head and approved by the chief nursing officer. That almost never happened. I asked why. Because the hospital is afraid of getting sued. sued. If they remove a complaint and the patient finds out, the patient can claim retaliation. Nobody wants that headache. I sat at my counter holding the phone and let it sink in. The system wasn't broken by accident. It was designed to protect the hospital from legal trouble, not the people who actually worked there. The next day, I wrote out every interaction with Francine, hour by hour, with timestamps. Darcy had her 3-page statement done by lunch. Kim had hers finished the night before. Bev took longer. She handed me 2 pages in a sealed envelope at the end of the week and asked me not to read it in front of her. She'd written about the meds, about her licensing board call, about being scared one person was going to take nursing away from her. I put all 4 statements together with mine and brought the whole thing to Rosalie. She read every page. "This is strong," she said. Then she warned me. The department head was Dave Watson. Dave had been running the department for 8 years and took pride in how things were handled. Telling him 5 complaints had slipped through was telling him he failed. He didn't take that well. I told her I didn't care how he took it. I wanted the meeting. 3 days later, I was in his office with the folder on my lap. I walked him through it. 4 nurses, 6 days, 5 formal complaints, 0 findings of wrongdoing. 1 write-up over medication the pharmacy proved was correct. Dave read every statement. When he finished, he folded his hands on the folder. "I understand your frustration, but these complaints were filed through the proper patient advocacy channels. The system worked as intended." I felt heat crawl up the back of my neck. Darcy was pulled from the floor for 2 days over a complaint that had no evidence. Bev was written up over medication the pharmacy confirmed was correct. How is that working? He slid the folder back across the desk. "I hear you, but I'm not reopening closed complaints based on staff frustration. You can escalate to the chief nursing officer. I'd advise against it." Meeting over, calm voice, clean hands. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't get angry. He just shut the door in my face with a smile. I sat in the parking garage for 10 minutes before I could drive. Then I called Jefferson. He wasn't surprised. Dave had been department head for 8 years and had never overturned a patient complaint. Not once. It's his brand. He thinks it makes him look fair. Jefferson told me Aeneas Blackwell, the chief nursing officer, was different. He actually read what people put in front of him. The next morning, I called Aeneas's office. Earliest slot was 3 weeks out, Tuesday morning. I took it. That night around 9:30, Rosalie texted, "Francine Oglesby was just readmitted through the ER, kidney infection. Same floor. She's asking for you by name." 2 weeks gone. Now she was back, asking for the man she'd filed against. The next morning, I took her assignment voluntarily, wrote my name next to her room before anyone else could see the sheet. Francine was sitting up in bed with her hair brushed, hands folded. The second she saw me, her whole face lit up. There he is, my favorite nurse. She asked about my weekend, said she felt so bad about last time, that everyone had been so rude to her except me, and that's why she'd asked for me. I checked her IV, checked her vitals, updated her chart. The second I stepped out, I opened a note on my phone and typed the date, the time, and every word she'd said since I walked in. This time I was going to log every interaction, every word, every request, every shift in tone. For the first 2 days, she was a different person. Said please, said thank you, pressed the call button maybe 3 times a shift, all for reasonable things. Complimented my technique. On the second day, Rosalie pulled me aside. "She's behaving. Maybe it was just a bad week last time." I shook my head. "She's building trust. She did the same thing before. I was the last one she filed against because I was the last one she was nice to." Rosalie didn't argue, but she didn't agree. The risk was real. If Francine kept being pleasant the whole stay, my petition would look like a grudge. Aeneas might never read the statements at all. That's what made the second admission worse than the first. The first time, the cruelty was the problem. This time, the kindness was. Every smile she gave me made my case weaker. On the third day, the turn started. Small. The heated blanket the other hospital had, the inedible food, the menu she shouldn't have to pick from. By afternoon, the call button was going every 20 minutes. Pillow, temperature, remote, water too warm, blinds too bright, then too dim. Each request small, stacked, the same pattern as before. I logged every one with a timestamp. On the 4th day, she asked for a female nurse to help with bathing. I arranged it. The nurse, 2 years on the floor, good attitude, came out 10 minutes later looking like she'd been slapped. Francine had told her she used too much soap, was scrubbing too hard, and was going to file a complaint. I asked her to write down exactly what happened. She came back 20 minutes later with a page and a half. I added it to the file, but sliding her statement in with the rest, I knew how it would read to someone like Dave Watson. I'd arranged the bathing nurse. I'd sent her in. If Francine filed against her too, it would look like I was using my coworkers to build a case. I wasn't, but I could already hear how he'd spin it. That evening, eating leftovers at my counter, Jefferson called. He'd talked to someone in Aeneas's office, confirmed the Tuesday meeting. Then the warning. Aeneas had been under pressure from the board about patient satisfaction scores. A story about a patient who files too many complaints could go sideways. He might see me as the problem, not her. After my shift the next day, I sat in the break room with every document spread on the table. The 4 statements, my real-time log, the bathing nurse's account, the transfer notes. Then I called Aldrich Beach. Aldrich worked in medical records and owed me a favor from years back. He picked up on the 3rd ring. I asked one question. He was quiet for a second. "I can't share patient records. You know that." I told him I wasn't asking for her chart. I just needed to know if there was a pattern. He went quiet again. Then his voice dropped lower. "When a patient is flagged for repeated staff conflicts across facilities in our network, the network creates an internal coordination note. It's not in the main chart. It's in the administrative file. And Francine Oglesby has one." I asked what it said. "I can't read it to you, but I can tell you it references 11 formal complaints across 3 hospitals in 18 months. 11. I couldn't speak. 11 complaints? 3 hospitals, 18 months. It was never just our floor. Francine had been doing this everywhere she went. Every hospital, new nurses to target, new careers to put at risk, and every time, the system let her. I sat there at the break room table looking at the papers with that number bouncing around in my head. 11 nurses, people I'd never met, sitting at home right now second-guessing themselves the same way Darcy was. Maybe some of them had already left the profession because of it. I made a decision. I wasn't going to Aeneas alone. The next day, I found Darcy first. I didn't share patient details. I just told her Francine had done this at other hospitals, multiple times. Her jaw tightened. "Then we go together, all 4 of us, to your meeting with Aeneas." Kim, same story. "I already told you I'd write 10 pages. You think I won't show up in person? Tell me when and where. Bev was the one I worried about. I found her near the lockers, tired in the way you get from carrying something heavy all day. When I finished telling her, she stood looking at the floor. Then she looked up. If it means getting that write-up removed from my file, I'm in. That was all she had to give, and it was enough. 4 nurses, walking in together. Over the next 2 days, Francine got worse. She called me in to dispute her chart, said her pain was a 7, not the 4 I'd recorded. I told her I'd documented what she'd reported and offered to update the current entry. She ignored that and demanded a supervisor. I went to find Rosalie. The second Rosalie walked in. Francine's whole tone shifted. Helpless, wobbling voice. He's been cold to me this entire stay. He doesn't check on me enough. I've been in pain and he ignores my calls. Rosalie pulled up the call log on the room's computer and scrolled in silence for 30 seconds. The log shows consistent response times. He responded to every call within 4 minutes. Francine didn't even pause. Then the log is wrong. Rosalie stood there for a beat. A patient had just told her the hospital's electronic system was lying, not a timestamp issue. The log was wrong, like the computer had a personal problem with her. In the hallway after, Rosalie didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She was starting to believe me. The next morning I got to the hospital early, focused. 2 more days to my meeting. The elevator opened and Rosalie was already there waiting for me. Her face was pale. Francine filed a new complaint this morning, against you. She's saying you accessed her medical records without authorization and shared her private information with other staff. She's alleging a privacy violation. The floor tilted. A privacy violation isn't a note in a file. That's compliance officers, legal review, interviews with everyone you've talked to in a month. That can cost your license, make you unhireable. I'd never accessed her records, never shared anything. Didn't matter. The accusation alone triggers the process. 2 days to Aeneas, and now I was walking in as someone under investigation. I'd spent weeks building a case to protect my coworkers. Francine had just turned the same machine I was trying to fix into a weapon and aimed it at my license. I called Jefferson that night. He told me not to cancel. If you show Aeneas the pattern, the privacy complaint becomes exhibit A of how she escalates when she doesn't get control. You just have to frame it right. Tuesday morning, 7:45 hallway outside Aeneas's office, folder under my arm. Darcy showed up first in a pressed blouse. Kim, 2 minutes later, statement in a clear plastic sleeve. Bev last, eyes red, but she was there. 8 o'clock, the door opened. Aeneas was behind a wide desk. Older, gray, reading glasses on a stack of papers. He looked up, saw the 4 of us, and something crossed his face. Not annoyance, curiosity. I don't usually get a group for these meetings. Tell me why you're all here. I stepped forward. 1 patient, Francine Oglesby. 6 days, 5 complaints, 4 nurses, 0 findings of wrongdoing. Monday, she refused me. Tuesday, she burned through 2 more. By Thursday, she was filing formal written complaints. By Saturday, she'd gotten a nurse written up over medication the pharmacy confirmed was correct. I handed him the folder. He read every word on every page. The 4 of us stood in silence and watched him for almost 10 minutes. When he finished, he looked up, not at me, at Darcy. She took a breath. 12 years. Never a complaint before Francine. Pulled off the floor for 2 days while they investigated her. Found nothing. I cried because the system believed her over me without even asking my side first. Kim didn't wait. I had to sit in front of my supervisor for 3 hours and defend my footwear like I was on trial. That complaint is in my file. It's going to follow me to every job I ever apply to. Bev's voice shook from the first word. The meds, the pharmacy, the write-up anyway, the call to her licensing board. 1 patient filed 1 fake complaint about 1 thing that never happened, and now I have to worry about whether I get to keep being a nurse. Her voice cracked on that last part. She didn't try to keep going. She just stopped and looked at the floor. Nobody filled the silence for her. Nobody needed to. The room went quiet. Aeneas looked at all 4 of us and turned to me. And now she's filed a privacy complaint against you. Not a question. I nodded. She filed it because I started pushing back. I never accessed her records, but she knew a privacy complaint would scare me into stopping. That's what she does. She escalates until the other person gives up. I'm not giving up. Aeneas held my gaze. Do you have evidence that this is a pattern beyond your facility? I told him about the transfer notes from her first admission, 2 previous admissions at other network facilities, both with notes about patient-staff conflicts, then the administrative coordination note. I was careful. I didn't say I'd read it or who told me. I said the note existed. The network's own system had flagged her for repeated staff complaints across multiple facilities. 11 complaints. 3 hospitals, 18 months. Your system flagged her, but nobody on our floor was ever told. We walked in blind. Aeneas was quiet, not thinking quiet. The kind of quiet where someone is sitting with something heavy. He turned to his computer and read for a full minute. His jaw tightened. When he turned back to us, something in his face had hardened. I'm going to be honest with you. I pulled the coordination note before this meeting because Jefferson Price called my office last week and told me this was coming. I read it. 11 complaints, 3 hospitals, 2 nurses at the second facility resigned after her complaints. One of them had 17 years of experience. Silence. 17 years of showing up for shifts, of doing the work, and Francine Oglesby walked in, and that nurse walked away from all of it. Darcy's eyes filled. She was doing the math in her head. She almost was one of those nurses. The pattern is clear. The fact that no one communicated this to your floor before her second admission is a systems failure on our part. Our part. He owned it. He stood up, both hands flat on the desk. Here's what I'm going to do. First, I'm ordering a formal review of every complaint Francine Oglesby filed at this facility. If the investigation found no evidence of wrongdoing, the complaint will be removed from the employee's file. Not sealed. Removed. Bev covered her mouth. Second, the privacy complaint against you will be investigated per policy. I can't skip that step, but I'm noting in the file that it was filed in the context of a documented pattern of retaliatory complaints. That context will be part of the record. That was all I needed. Third, I'm implementing a protocol. When a patient has an administrative coordination note for repeated staff complaints, the charge nurse on the receiving floor will be notified before the patient arrives. That information existed in our system and sat there doing nothing while 4 nurses on your floor took the hit. That ends now. Darcy grabbed my arm. Kim was nodding, jaw set. Bev was crying quietly. Aeneas came around the desk. You did the right thing coming here, and I'm sorry it took this long for someone to listen. We walked out together, down the hallway, into the elevator, doors closed. Darcy leaned against the wall and let out out a sound that was half laugh and half sob. Kim put a hand on Bev's shoulder. 4 nurses got their names back. Francine was still out there. She'd probably get admitted to some hospital outside the network one day and run the same play on people who didn't see it coming. I couldn't stop that. But on this floor, the 4 of us got back what she'd taken. I clocked in the next morning. The folder went in a drawer. Someone else had Francine's old room.